Welcome. This is Stop the Silence, a black and white conversation. I'm Richard D'Alessandro.
And good afternoon, I am Brandon Dickerson.
And we're here to talk about what's going on in the country. A lot of the things we're seeing in the news, and just a lot of emotions right now.
Yeah, definitely. So before we get into the conversation and the questions, start with a little bit of just ground rules and just a little bit of background on not ourselves, but on what we're going to have for the video. So one thing is we're going to make sure that we're respectful. So we're going to share our thoughts, we're going to share our opinions, even if they are unpopular. We just want to make sure that we're at least respectful in the conversation that we have.
All right, and we're going to use some labels. We're going to talk about black people and white people. We're not doing that to discriminate or to disparage, but Stop the Silence is really about having frank and open discussions, and we're going to be talking about the racial injustices that are going on right now.
And I think it's necessary. I think we absolutely have to say black and white people just to make sure that we're clear. So
yeah, and do you represent all black people?
I do not, will not speak for the black delegation today. I am speaking as myself, my opinions, and maybe some folks that I know to share experiences with me, but no, I'm not speaking.
And I speak for myself and nobody else. This is going to be just two guys talking about some tough topics.
Exactly, just an open, honest conversation between two colleagues and two friends, and hopefully we can get something good out of it.
Right.
So I wanted to sort of start the conversation by asking you, so you took on the Stop the Silence campaign and wanted to lead that. So what was moved within you to want to have this conversation and to want to start this campaign across Washington?
All right, well, for me, the George Floyd video was the turning point for me. Watching that video was very difficult. And I think it forced me to try to find out why does it seem like this continues to happen? And generally what it is mostly black men being killed by police in situations where it doesn't seem like it's life-threatening to the police. And that George Floyd video, I think, was the last one, and it was the most obvious one, which wasn't a threat. And so it really had me exploring, what's going on here. And as I started looking into, the Black Lives Matter movement and everything associated with it, I started listening to people speaking, I started reading about it, and there were a couple things that really moved me. One was that there is a systematic problem in this country, and there's tons of statistics we can talk about, evidence across the board about how things are not actually equal. A lot of folks believe they're not prejudiced, they're not biased. But I can tell you from my perspective, it's not a topic that I really looked into. I don't talk about it with my family much. It doesn't come up in my social circles. And so what I started to thinking is that not talking about it could actually be part of the problem. And so I came up with the term "Stop the Silence" because I think these topics need to be discussed. Need to be discussed, among white people, and frankly, I think it need to be discussed between white people and black people so that we can understand what's going on and hear both sides of that, position.
Yeah. This is something that I sort of grew up living, like being a black man growing up in the suburbs of Detroit, and maybe not the nicer suburbs of Detroit, and having had several run-ins with police growing up. So for me, it's kind of sad, but I'm sort of numb to the situation, and not necessarily like I don't care, but I guess it's expected. I know what happens. Like it's happened to me, and so
yeah, and that's one of the big differences too. I watched that video and I was horrified and shocked. And you and I have talked about this. While it is a horrific event, you said you weren't shocked.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean.
And that by itself is a very sad position.
Exactly. And that was one of the conversations my wife and I had. Like, I don't know what's worse for me, the fact that it keeps happening, or the fact that I've gotten to a point in my life to where it doesn't surprise me and I've gotten almost numb to the situation.
Yeah.
Like, I feel bad that I am, but is this more like I don't get turned to like rage or like, I guess, I mean, I get saddened by it, without a doubt I get saddened by it, but then in my head I think, all right, what can I do more to try to help resolve the problem? And I get pushed towards that way, but I don't get, I guess, the emotional rise that some people now get. I don't get that anymore.
Yeah, and so for me, you know, obviously we have a completely different background and experiences, but for me, you know, coming out of this event and learning about it, you know, I've always considered myself to be non-biased, non-racist. And as I've done more research about it, I don't think that's enough anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I think I saw something where we need to be anti-biased and anti-racist, which means we have to take an active action to do something, right? You can't just passively sit back and say, well, that doesn't apply to me. I think it applies to all of us. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, I started doing my own, you know, introspective in terms of what can I do here. And I'm not the kind of person that goes out and protests, you know, and I'm not a great, you know, writer. It's not like I can write about it. So the one thing that I happen to be in a position of is leadership, and I lead people. And so I thought the one thing that I can do is lead by example. And the Stop the Silence really is to encourage more people to just have conversations. And I think through the conversations, I'm hopeful that, you know, we can get more people out of that lane of non-biased into anti-biased.
Exactly.
That's what we're hoping to achieve here.
Yeah, and you know, I think that's fair. I'm a big believer in having the conversations is a perfect place to start, because a part of the conversations, and this kind of goes to the protesting piece, right? Some of the protesting is bringing awareness, but a lot of that still gets falling on some folks that may not understand or see the problem.
Right.
And so starting to have real candid conversations and bringing some of those folks in,
right,
and having respectful conversations where we may not agree or maybe on different sides, right, so that you can start to break down those barriers and start to come to some level of understanding with this is how this group of people are feeling.
Yeah, that's a great point. This is not about just us making a video and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
We really have a goal of having these conversations with a broader group of people across SNGS.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's what we want to do. In those conversations, we want to take various topics and talk about the different views of those topics. Mm-hmm. And one of them that I wanted to talk about is Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter is a movement that really represents the racial injustice in the country. Yes. And for you, it probably has some deep meaning in terms of the struggles that you faced, you know, through your life, right?
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, trying to debate on how many stories we want to get into, but so when I think of Black Lives Matter, you can think of like when it started after the more recent police killings of black men, and particularly unarmed black men. That I think it may have started after Tamir Rice, but I know like Trayvon Martin may have been the first one to really sort of start the momentum.
Right.
But it's first is the killing of the unarmed black men, but then the second piece is the killing of the unarmed black men without the justice. And so that's a piece that sometimes gets lost. But like black men will get killed, or black women will get killed, and then there will be no repercussions. There will be no justice. Right. And so, or like it'll go to trial, but the person will get off, or the cop will get administrative leave, and like nothing like serious would happen. And so I think starting to bring that to light so that we can understand that there's a problem here, so that we can then try to figure out steps to fix it.
Yeah, and on that topic, you know, between some videos that I've watched, some news that I've watched, there are people on the other side of that say things like all lives matter. Mm-hmm. And you know, when they say things like that, how do you react to that?
That's a really good question. So it's almost like a slap in the face or a complete dismissal of like an entire group of people's feelings. So you have Black Lives Matter movement, and like not just the organization, but all of the people that may not deal with the organization, but the people that have kind of taken to the feeling and the theme of the movement, that are outcrying, that are saying we're being killed, we are hurt, we're struggling, and like, there are injustices happening to us. And then when I hear all lives matter, I think that person, what I hear in that person is, shut up, you're flying, stop your plane.
Yeah, so I never really understood, you know, that black view for a long time. And then I watched something, and there's this little story that I kind of latched onto that really makes it clear to me. You know, if there were a group of women, 20, 30,000 women down in D.C. at the mall marching for breast cancer awareness, it would be completely inappropriate for you to run through that crowd and say, there are other types of cancers out there, or more people die every year from heart disease. Why are you focusing on one disease? That would be viewed as completely insensitive to their cause. So the Black Lives Matter is a cause that the people are rising up and trying to bring light to it. And by saying things like all lives matter is the same thing as saying, you know, more people die from heart disease, which is just a completely insensitive position to take.
No.
Yeah.
And another point that I'll make is the frustrating part, I think, for me is we're trying to enact some level of change. Right? There's something that we think is wrong. We're going to sort of try to fix this problem. So when you hear this fairly large population of people that sort of diminish what you feel the problem is, it's like, isn't the first step in fixing the problem is accepting that there is a problem?
Right.
And so if you have this large group of people that won't accept that there is a problem, we've got a ways to go before we can start to fix the problem.
Right.
So that, to me, that is one of the frustrating points.
So this is Stop the Silence, a black and white conversation. We're going to have more of these. We're going to be talking to staff in small groups, maybe 10 to 15 people.